Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier, and thank you as always for stopping by. We're obviously in a fluid week awaiting the election on Thursday, and plenty of things going on. Let me start with some macro thoughts. This is Holger. Still a lot of liquidity out there. Balance sheets of Bank of Japan, ECB, People's Bank of China and the Fed at or near all-time highs. Please keep this in the back of your mind. I wrote about this liquidity in September last year when I was talking about mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice. And what I was referring to was, look at this, Japan's Nikkei 225 is up for a record 16th day. That's from David Inglis. The Nasdaq 100 index is also having a crazy good year, as you can see from this. From Bloomberg. S&P on pace to finish higher for the 12th consecutive month, tying the record set in 1936 and 1949. And really that's these markets have floated higher on a golden flood of liquidity. Bitcoin, the headline is, drops as Saudi billionaire al-Walid sees Enron-like demise for the cryptocurrency. But bear in mind, when I put out my recommendation at the beginning of the year, it was at $1,000. Today it's at $6,000. Home thoughts, gems, old town Mombasa. These photographs from Peter's size 10. Old photographs of the old town. And we used to wander around there occasionally. It's beautiful architecture, a little bit faded, as Mombasa always is. The founding of Mombasa is associated with two rulers, Mwana Makisi, female, and Shehe Mavita, according to oral history and medieval commentaries. Shehe Mavita superseded the dynasty of Mwana Makisi and established his own town on Mombasa Island. Mavita is remembered as a Muslim of great learning and so is connected more directly with the present ideals of Swahili culture that people identify with Mombasa. The ancient history associated with Shehe Mavita and the founding of an urban settlement on Mombasa Island is still linked to present-day peoples living in Mombasa. 12 nations Swahili lineages recount this ancient history today and are the keepers of local Swahili traditions. Even though today Mombasa is a very heterogeneous cultural mix, families associated with the 12 nations are still considered the original inhabitants of the city. Most of the early information on Mombasa comes from Portuguese chroniclers writing in the 16th century. In 1331, the famous Moroccan scholar and traveller Ibn Battuta also visited the area during his travels to the Swahili coast and made some mention of the city. Although he only stayed one night, he noted that the people of Mombasa were Shafi Muslims, a religious people, trustworthy and righteous. Their mosques are made of wood, expertly built. The exact founding date of the city is unknown, but it has a long history. Kenyan school history books place the founding of Mombasa as 900 AD. Give you a Jack Kerouac quote for the day. The air was soft, the stars so fine, the promise of every cobbled alley so great that I thought I was in a dream. This is the tomb of Zain al-Abidin's mother, circa 1400, in the old city Srinagar, from William Dalrymple. And the reason that caught my attention was because of this story, killed for their bones. This is the albinos, and particularly in this region, it's very unfortunate. And I saw that the economic value of the bones of one individual albino is estimated at $75,000. There is a world inside the world, Don DeLillo says in Libra. There is enough mystery in the facts as we know them, enough of conspiracy, coincidence, loose ends, dead ends, multiple interpretations. There is no need to invent the grand and masterful scheme the plot that reaches flawlessly in a dozen directions. And the reason that came to mind, of course, is we're hoping to see the release of documents related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Political reflections, this caught my attention. There is a phrase, strategic promiscuity, which is what we should indulge in, says Indrajit Kumaraswamy, the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. The trick is to get everybody to come, he says. This was in a story called China-backed port sparks Sri Lanka's sovereignty fears. The flagship port mired in heavy losses, the new government in July ceded a controlling interest to Beijing-controlled China Merchants Port in exchange for a $1.1 billion write-off. The deal has been denounced by government critics as an erosion of sovereignty and spurred regional powerhouse India into investments of its own amid concerns in New Delhi about China's growing regional clout, which is something I touched on previously. Government is playing geopolitics with national assets, stop selling Sri Lanka, tweeted Namal Rajapaksa, Hambantotot's MP and son of the former president. We inherited this thing, he said, $1.5 billion and nothing to show. Loans were coming due, we had to make payments and we had the capacity to bring large-scale business to Hambantota. Colombo has sought to assuage Indian fears about China's grip on its coastline, stressing that a Sri Lankan state-controlled company will oversee ships' access to Hambantota, while the Chinese Navy will be barred from the port. But the details of the agreement remain secret, and some analysts question how watertight the latter provision may prove. And I wrote about this in August when I said Sri Lanka, which gorged on Chinese debt, had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. And this is a risk of all these countries are taking on great deals of debt to put in all this infrastructure, because if the volume doesn't come, this is where it ends. North Korea sends unprecedented open letter to the West, urging sharp vigilance against Donald Trump. This is a short TV clip on The Independent. If Trump thinks he would bring the DPRK, a nuclear power, to its knees through nuclear war threat, it will be a big miscalculation and an expression of ignorance. Again, I wrote about North Korea under the title "As Screaming Comes Across the Sky," Gravity's Rainbows, a 1973 novel by Thomas Pynchon, which is about the design, production and dispatch of V-2 rockets by the German military. In particular, it features the quest undertaken by several characters to uncover the secret of a mysterious device named the Schwarzgerät, the black device, slated to be installed in a rocket with the serial number 00000. As the world watches Pyongyang, I cannot help wondering if Kim Jong-un has read Pynchon, which speaks of a screaming coming across the sky. It is a curve each of them feels unmistakably. It is the parabola. They must have guessed, once or twice guessed and refused to believe that everything, always, collectively, had been moving toward that purified shape latent in the sky, that shape of no surprise, no second chance, no return. Steve Bannon says, I think the single most important thing that's happening in the world is the situation in Qatar. What's happening in Qatar is every bit as important as what's happening in North Korea. McClatchy reported on Monday that the UAE is paying the parent company of Bannon-linked Cambridge Analytica $330,000 for a public relations campaign against Qatar on social media. That's a company I have nothing to do with, Bannon told the moderator of the Hudson Institute event. 12th of June 2017, I wrote a piece called Rolling Over Qatar. 23rd May 2016, I wrote a piece about how Qatar was punching beyond its size. And in August 2011, an eternity ago, I wrote a piece about soft power, Qatar and Al Jazeera. I said what I want to look at is Al Jazeera and how it is a preeminent example of soft power. in this 21st century of ours. Soft power is the ability to obtain what one wants through co-option and attraction. It can be contrasted with hard power, that is the use of coercion and payment. Soft power can be wielded not just by states, but by all actors in international politics, such as NGOs, international institutions. So the idea of attraction as a form of power dates back to ancient Chinese philosophers such as Lao Tzu in the 7th century BC. He said, "Water is fluid, soft and yielding, but water will wear away rock, which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. This is another paradox. What is soft is strong." I was saying there are about 250,000 Qataris in a world of around 7 billion, and that they're beaming into 200 million households. And I was defining that as a good example of soft power. My piece over the weekend was about political risk, and I sort of started off in Catalonia and came back to Kenya. During Mr. Tillerson's visit to Baghdad, PM Haider al-Abadi called the fighters the hope of Iraq and the region. These are irregular militias, Iranian Shia militias that Mr. Tillerson is taking issue with and said it was time for them to go home now that the battle for IS was coming to a close. But during their talks in Baghdad, Abadi said the paramilitaries were Iraqis, not Iranian proxies, and that they should be encouraged because they will be the hope of the country in the region, his office said. The fighters defended their country and sacrificed themselves to defeat the Islamic State group, the statement added. And this is interesting. The Americans are trying to prize Iraq away from Iran with this Iraq-Saudi Arabia summit, but I'm not sure it's going to work. ISIS Jihadis have returned home by the thousands, says the New Yorker. Over the past few months, as the size of the Islamic State's caliphate rapidly shrunk, the Pentagon began citing the number of enemy dead as an important barometer of longer-term success. We have killed, in conservative estimates, 60,000 to 70,000. General Raymond Thomas, the head of U.S. Special Operations Command, told the Aspen Security Forum in July. They declared an army, they put it on the battlefield, and we went to war with it, he said. A high kill rate, which once misled the US military about its prospects in Vietnam, has eased concerns in the US today about the future attempts at revenge from ISIS's foreign fighters. We're not seeing a lot of flow out of the core caliphate because most of those people are dead now, Lieutenant General Kenneth McKenzie Jr., the director of the Pentagon's Joint Staff. They're unable to manifest the former activities they did to try to pose themselves as a state. Yet the calculus is pivotal now that the IS pseudo-caliphate has collapsed. Just how many fighters have survived? Where are they? What threat do they pose? Between 2014 and 2016, the perpetrators of all but 4 of the 42 terrorist acts in the West had some connection to ISIS. A new report to be released Tuesday by the Soufan Group and the Global Strategy Network details some of the answers. At least 5,600 people from 33 countries have already gone home. And most countries don't yet have a head count. On average, 20 to 30% of the foreign fighters from Europe have already returned there, though it's 50% in Britain, Denmark and Sweden. Thousands more who fought for ISIS are stuck near the borders of Turkey, Jordan or Iraq, and are believed to be trying to get back to their home countries. As the territorial caliphate shrinks and is increasingly denied an overt presence, its leadership will look to supporters overseas, including returnees, to keep the brand alive. Overall, since 2011, more than 40,000 people from more than 110 countries traveled to join ISIS. In addition to the local Syrians and Iraqis who became fighters, among these jihadis was 7,400 from the West, 5,000 of them from Europe. The total number then was only about 10,000, and look what havoc they caused, Soufan said. Compare that to more than 40,000 today, with their ability to communicate today. I wrote a piece in April 2013 when I was talking about the brothers Sarnaev, And I said, put it a different way, there are surely many brothers Sanev in this new 21st century of ours. And I said, there are more than 7 billion of us, and the long tail in a population of 7 billion is not an insignificant absolute number. The long tail is people right at the extremities of doing these sorts of things. In statistics, a long tail of some distributions of numbers is the portion of the distribution having a large number of occurrences far from the head or central part of the distribution. Put it a different way, surely many brothers Sanev in this new 21st century of ours. John Pfaff, obituary. We are sad to announce the death of irony today, killed by a single tweet to the back of the head. Take a look. International markets, bond traders are piling into a Fed-proof bed. This is the curve flattening trade everyone's got on, basically. 2-year yields in the US have been going up. 10-year yield has been coming down, so the differential has been narrowing. Betting on a flatter curve from 2 to 10 years is a key trade for NatWest. I'm still favor curve flattener. Short-term rates are creeping higher from the Fed, and the long end is held in check with inflation running at low levels. Let's move on to the currency markets, where we've seen a strengthening dollar of late. Euro dollar 117.50, lot will hinge on Draghi. Dollar index 93.80, Japanese yen 113.64, touched 114.10 yesterday, which was the highest since July 11. Swiss franc 0.9857, the pound 131.84, the Australian dollar 0.7783, India rupee 64.905, South Korean won 1127.67, the Real 323.78, Egyptian pound 17.6282, and the Rand 13.72. Dollar index has hurdled that key level of mine of 93.50. We're now at 93.80, and I think we aim at 95.50. Euro dollar, this chart is from T Commodity. He's targeting 113.20. I've been targeting 114.50. Euro dollar. Dollar yen makes bullish trend line break. Again, this is from T Commodity. My target now is 115.50. We're currently at 113.62, and there's a rumor going around the market that Japan will reduce its inflation outlook, which will be bullish for dollar yen. Commodity markets, look at crude oil, last trading at $51.88. This chart is from Triple Leverage. He's making an interesting point. He's looking for a downside break. Whereas T Commodities talking about a close above $52.25 this week is bullish. Gold last at 1280. Still, it's been very confusing to trade. Geopolitics comes to the fore at times. The dollar is more important than others. But it looks to me as if, could go to 1250, 1350 range. Let's move on to Sub-Saharan Africa. Africa Confidential, Somalia, both sides doubled down. The government is launching a new offensive with US military backing against al-Shabaab strongholds in the wake of last weekend's truck bomb in the capital. Over the weekend, I said President Farmajo is all set to call for more war. Political risk in Africa can be read in tooth and claw. Somalia, with its newly minted government, has been an improving news story until last week, when the explosion of an enormous car bomb flashed dystopian images of Mogadishu around the world. I saw a photo of two sons carrying the charred embers of their mother. President Farmajo is all set to call for more war. And here you see him in a photograph taken from the end of last month when he was returning from a state visit to Egypt. US, on that note, will expand counter-terrorism in Africa. Mattis tells senators the military is shifting its counter-terrorism strategy to focus more on Africa, putting decision-making authority in the hands of commanders in the field. The war is morphing, Graham said. You're going to see more actions in Africa, not less. You're going to see more aggression by the United States towards our enemies, not less. You're going to have decisions being made not in the White House, but out in the field. Togo's President Gnassingbé should resign immediately as Gambia's foreign minister. UN has condemned arrests of Congo opposition members. The UN has declared the highest level of emergency in DR Congo. The alarm bells are ringing loud and clear, they said. Bitcoin is breaking all kinds of price records in cash-strapped Zimbabwe. Interest in Bitcoin is soaring in Zimbabwe, and so is the price of the cryptocurrency, which hit new record highs of nearly $10,000 earlier this month in a worsening economy that the government is struggling to turn around. Bitcoin is trading at, what is it trading at? 5,722 on the international markets, and all that's about is the fear of the return of rampant inflation. And I wrote about this admittedly a while ago in July 2016. I said countries like Zimbabwe feel like they are right at the edge, an edge that was described thus by Hunter S. Thompson. There is the edge, there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. South African all-share up 14.5% year-to-date, just shy of a record. Dollar Rand, this chart is from T Commodity, and he's targeting over 15. I look for 14.40, but I agree with his thinking. Nigerian all-share up 35.49% this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 37.05% this year. President Uhuru Kenyatta insists that Thursday's election go ahead. Said on Monday that the IEBC had been given funds to do its job and it must deliver. We only insist that elections be held on October 26th, he said in an email statement after his meeting with the chairman of the IEBC, Chebukati. That's the timeline set by the IEBC in terms of conditions set in the annulment. Separately, Western envoys urged the agency on Monday to seek an extension to the election timetable from the Supreme Court if it's not ready to hold the vote this week. The suggestion was made by US Ambassador Bob Godek and backed by 19 other foreign diplomatic missions in Kenya. We are interested in a credible election, not quick fixes, Godek told reporters. The IEBC or any citizen should be free to request an extension beyond the 60 days. It's a question for the IEBC whether or not the election takes place on the 26th. Akombi's resignation and Chebukati's warning should enable the body to seek an extension of 30 to 45 days without violating the Constitution, the International Crisis Group said, which is interesting because at the head of the International Crisis Group, or Deputy Chairman, is Lord Malak Brown. Raila Odinga went to the UK and then posted a photograph meeting with him, so obviously that lobbying component worked. Anyone hoping Raila Odinga might change his position should read Coalition NASA's latest statement sent just now. That was yesterday. Take a read. Bob Godek, it is easier to tear down than to build up, but it is dangerous and it must stop. And over the weekend I said, of course, it would be remiss of me not to speak of our date with destiny on October the 26th. Interestingly, President Trump is set to accede to the release of the first documents on the JFK assassination on the same date. Gina Moore tweeted, "So much for anyone paying attention to the revote in Kenya on October 26th, I guess." Rosalind Akombi's, the erstwhile IEBC commissioner's disembodied voice, came to us out of the ether after she took off. She did a number of interviews. The IEBC chairman surfaced and did a near-perfect rendition of a rabbit caught in the headlights. The NASA leader announced all would be revealed the day before, on October the 25th. I said, we're in a very fluid moment. Will October 26th prove a political guillotine? Can the opposition maintain this insurgent and asymmetric response and degrade October 26th? We will discover the answers to these questions soon enough. I Gado on the money as usual, says Fromage Hom, it's a cartoon. Kisumu City CBD looking cool and neat, that's from Andrew Sule. Obviously that might well prove an epicenter of an asymmetric response. Kenya shilling 103.70. I stand by my comments from earlier this month where I said the central bank's FX operations are spectacularly effective. I also talked about how politics was landing blows on the economy. Nairobi all share up 17.05% year to date. NSE 20 up 11.15% year to date. And take a look at this chart 2 Kenya Eurobonds as a price graph, give you a better sense of what's been going on. Once again, thank you kindly for stopping by.